Good evening, everybody. Happy Sunday. I'm Kiana, and today we are going to be discussing a very concerning issue that really not a lot of people are talking about. Now, I tried to actually record this video earlier on my tablet and upload it to Facebook, but I was having some complications with doing that. I don't know, for some reason, it kept logging me out and it wouldn't allow me to upload it. So I know that, in the times that we're in, sometimes our devices are not safe and secure, and I'm very mindful of that. And so I suspect that the content or the information that I'm talking about today in this video may be sliced and diced and circulated to different parties to get a reaction, so they get angry at me, and that's fine. But I'm going to be speaking very candidly in this video, and I'm going to be speaking truth to power. So let's get into it. There is a very troubling phenomenon that is happening in this world today. So we understand that right now there is a lot of tension between the West and the Middle East. And of course, there is some perceptions in the West and perceptions in the East and the Middle East. And those perceptions are having a trickle down effect on communities, and communities are either advocating for a cause or not advocating for a cause. But at any rate, what is happening abroad in the Middle East is causing a lot of division within societies across the world. But what I'm concerned about is that there is a troubling practice called transnational repression. And this practice is really thought to be perpetuated, propagated by, of course, non democratic regimes. And essentially, what is it? This may be your first time hearing of transnational repression. You're like, Kiana, what is it? Transnational repression essentially is when states reach their tentacles across their borders to silence dissent. And it's supranational actors. So, what is supranational? Supranational is where you have actors that have considerable power that is being able to be, like I said, the tentacles that's retched in different nations. So, of course, this is power that is impacting different nations. And so you have countries that have this supranational power, or just supranational in general, that has a serious impact on our daily lives. And one of the way in which we as human beings are impacted is through the practice of transnational repression. And so it's essentially a form of dissent to stop the person from being able to speak out against human rights abuses. So, transnational repression is really solely about corruption. It's about human rights abuses. It's about silencing the dissenting party. And so you may ask, well, Kiana, who is engaging in this transnational repression? And so there's two countries whose intelligence agencies are actually abusing this practice, and they're both Western nations, and that is the United States and the Republic of Ireland. These two countries are participating in transnational repression. They're putting, from what I know, American citizens through it. And how I know this is I was an asylum seeker in the Republic of Ireland. And it was I was placed in a circumstance where I had to represent my own cause and bring my causes myself and try to vindicate my rights myself as an asylum seeker. And so when you are a self representative litigant or a person who is taking on your own case, you have access to a portal that allows you to read judgments of other how the tribunal has decided different cases. And so because I'm an American citizen, because I was born in the United States, my focus was on, okay, how are tribunals determining and adjudicating cases involving Americans? And you wouldn't believe that what I seen was in each instance, the adjudicator determined that the person who fled the United States did so because they were not perceiving events properly, that they had a mental illness, that they were suffering from some mental issue, despite the claimant not having a mental issue. Now, I don't know the backgrounds of each individual case, so I am not going to purport to say that I do know the background, but from my interpretation of these judgments and actually speaking to asylum seekers and hearing their stories, I'm of the opinion that these judgments are fabricated and created to actually undermine the testimony of Americans who find it very difficult to get justice in the United States, flee the United States, and try to find safe haven abroad. So, why do I bring that up? I bring that up because for the last 4 years, I have been actually put through this troubling practice of transnational repression, where intelligence agencies are misusing their authority and trying to intimidate me, watching everything that I do. And this is not a new phenomenon. We know that this has happened before in time. Again, the sagacious Tariq Nasheed, he actually speaks about this in some of his videos where he talks about how intelligence agencies are actually, well, COINTELPRO is actually revising itself and coming back, of course, as a practice to intimidate African Americans. And he's not the only person who has actually spoken out about that. There are other Black activists and human rights defenders in the United States that have spoken very publicly and intelligently on transnational repression, but not actually using the phrase transnational repression, but actually saying that this is more of a COINTELPRO practice that US agencies are putting Black Americans through. And I would agree, this is something that is occurring with regularity, that Black Americans are being put through at home and abroad. Now, one of the most troubling aspects of transnational repression, of course, is proxy threats. Now, you may say, Kiana, what's proxy threats? Threats. Essentially, what it is where the state uses its influential position and its coercive power to intimidate your family members and have your family members try and discredit you and to go against you. What is an example of this? So, an example of this is where we've seen back when MLK was alive, where the FBI actually sent a poison pen letter to Martin Luther King's wife and saying that he was cheating on her and that a number of these false allegations And so, of course, Martin Luther King was a very public speaker, motivational speaker, religious speaker, and he often spoke around a lot of people. A lot of people, he was very influential, and a lot of people wanted to be around him. And so, what these intelligence agencies would do is that they would capitalize on moments like that. So, say, for instance, MLK took a picture with, a group of women. Well, what the FBI would do is take that picture of MLK and those women and say, look, Coretta Scott King, your husband is cheating on you with this woman who he is next to. So it was a way to discredit MLK, to sow dissension in the family, and to isolate MLK to do something more insidious. And so, what is that insidious practice? So, essentially, what happens is that once a person is isolated, as I spoke about in a few videos ago, what often happens is when the person is isolated, what the state will do is a state will, you know, devise an attack plan. And often what we see is this attack plan is calculated. So, for example, normally what the state does is it will test out certain situations. We know that this is very prominent in military operations, not only in military operations, but also when it comes to surgical tactics. That what the state will do is it will test out a mode of attack to see if that attack is efficacious. And if that attack is efficacious, then the blowback does not come back on the state, then the state knows that they can actually use that to harm the person. So sometimes when we are seeing something that's being published and circulated in the news, and we see that someone has actually been murdered or they lost their life, and sometimes you say, there's something about this story that the pieces of this puzzle are not really fitting together. There's something very odd about this story, what I'm reading, what I'm listening to, what I'm hearing. Sometimes, and ladies and gentlemen, this is not all the time, but sometimes what happens is that the state will, unfortunately, we know that the state will unalive its own citizens and create this, what I call essentially what it is it's an attack plan. So they will unalive their citizens to see if there's going to be any response to it. If there's little reception, little response to that attack, then the state knows that this is going to be successful and could potentially be something that they could use in the future. And so, why do I bring this up? Because, like I told you, I am very concerned that, for the last 4 years, because I am a Black American, I have been speaking out against racialized abuse that's been happening in the United States for a very long time, and have been doing so since I've been abroad. And because I've been speaking out against this racialized abuse, what is happening is that I'm being intimidated by these intelligence agencies who are actually working behind the scenes. So they're not going to actually come out and intimidate me in person. You know why that is because if they come out and intimidate me in person, then there is a record of that intimidation. But oftentimes, intimidation happens digitally. So we can see that, when you think about cyberbullying, a lot of children are being cyberbullied online and unfortunately taking their own life. And this is what intelligence agencies are doing, unfortunately. We have the United States intelligence agencies, and we also have the Republic of Ireland, its intelligence agencies, trying to push human rights defenders to the brink so that they will unalive themselves. It's a very tragic situation that these intelligence agencies are engaging in. And so this brings me to my next point, that their the basis of their practice of isolation is to make it appear as if the victim or the human rights defender, to make it appear as if this person is actually having a mental health breakdown. And you may say, Kiana, no, you're talking about the wrong country. This is actually, our adversaries that are actually engaging in this practice. But, ladies and gentlemen, it's the US government, its intelligence agencies, and the Republic of Ireland, its intelligence agencies as well. These intelligence agencies are doing this too, and they're not actually looking for national security issues. And that's the sad thing. They're not focused on national security issues. They're not focused on people who are actually going to commit an act that is contrary to national security. They're not focused on domestic criminality. What they are focused on is silencing the voices of those who are speaking out against their practices. Now, another component of this is that I've seen in the Republic of Ireland, and of course, in countries that I've been to, but mainly, well, let me be clear. I've seen this predominantly in the Republic of Ireland, and I've seen it here in Belfast, I have to be honest, is performative allyship, performative activism. And so, in one of my classes, in my master's class, what I seen was our professor. What she did was she showed us an image, and it was of a soldier who was holding up a sign that says "Protect Human Rights" or "Human Rights." And so, under this blanket was a deceased body who was bleeding out, unfortunately. But from the lens, all that we could see, it was this soldier with a smile on his face saying, "Protect human rights." And that is what was all that was captured. But what was captured below that, we couldn't see, or actually the viewers couldn't see that. And so this is essentially how these groups, I'll say, like these groups, some, not all, but some of these groups, or I'll say like this image that I've seen in my human rights class, is what I'm seeing in the Republic of Ireland. And what I'm seeing in Belfast is that we'll have a large group of people protesting and saying, fight against racism, united against racism, and they're coming out. And basically, this is performative activism. It's performative in the sense that when a person is truly going through a practice of intimidation or oppression that is racialized, that these groups are nowhere to be found. Now, you would think that an organization that is united against racism, and we understand that racism is often perpetuated by the state when it has to do with minorities, you would think that these organizations would rally behind the cause because they understand that that person is powerless. But no, not in this case. When individuals are going through racialized abuse, especially in the Republic of Ireland, which is happening every single day, these groups, their only job is to go out and hide the fact that this is going on by saying united against racism, fight racism. And basically, what that does, it's a diversion to take our attention off of what is happening in the background. And so, if you've ever seen Childish Gambino's video, This is America, which I will attach to the description below in this video, is that what you see is a group that are actually dancing and being very performative, but in the background, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of fatalities happening in the background. And there is a larger story to be heard in the background, but all you see are these people in front dancing. And so our attention is focused on this group of people that are in front of us, capturing our attention. And basically, what it does is it is a distraction. We're distracted from what's going on in the background. And that is essentially what these protests are. Now, I'm not going to say all protests, so I don't want you to say, Kiana, you have it wrong, that you are, you know, painting all groups with a broad brush. No, I'm not. I'm not saying all, but some of these protests that are saying diversity, protect human rights, or united against racism, you know, this, that, whatever. These are performative groups, ladies and gentlemen. They're performative. They are not going to fight for racism, fight against racism when it's individualized. So, for example, only can they talk about racism in a group, right? Because, of course, you're not actually tackling a specific issue. You're just being performative. You're just saying, united against racism, we're fighting against racism on the street, but you're not actually addressing a specific issue or incident of a person who's being harmed by racism. So you don't have any responsibility there. And so that is essentially what is happening. We have groups that are coming together to, it's performative activism. And not only is it performative activism, it's more of a mockery to people that are actually being intimidated and going through oppressive practices and being harmed by this racism. And one way in which you know that these groups are very performative is you look at who is out there protesting. So usually when a person is harmed and they're harmed by a racialized event, you're going to have that group of people, that minority, or whichever group that is coming out and protesting against that event. But you rarely ever see that in these groups that are coming out to say united against racism. And so it raises your question, it raises a very important question. Are they really united against racism, or is this just a mockery to really make fun of people that are actually going through racism? Is the question. And so, lastly, I want to say that there is some information that I have collected myself on these intelligence agencies who are actually partaking in this abuse. And I think that this may come useful for somebody if you're going through it at a point, a time, or another. And one of the things is that these intelligence agencies that I've been dealing with, they dislike African Americans, Black Americans. Now, it's not any other group, so it's not any other racialized group. It's only a really passionate dislike for Black Americans. And I'm not going to tell you how I got that information, but I actually really did some research and tested this out to see exactly if this was a practice against me or if this was a practice against others. And so it was a practice that was very racialized, not only against me, but of course against other Black Americans. Also, it is a this group of intelligence agencies, they don't like people from the LGBTQ community. This is another social group that these people working in intelligence dislike. And we know that there's not a lot of LGBTQ people working in intelligence agencies. There's not a lot of diversity in these, intelligence agencies. So, because there's not a lot of diversity, there is more room for prejudice and hate. Another another discovery is that these intelligence agencies do not like Jewish people. They have a disdain for Jewish people. If you speak out on the behalf of Jewish people, then you're going to come under attack by these intelligence agencies. So, for example, there's been a couple of times where I posted, you know, on behalf of the victims in Israel, because of course I am about the children and I'm about protecting innocent lives on both sides. And so anytime that I posted something about Israel, my posts were often like didn't show up or were suppressed. So you can see how these intelligence agencies are staffed with groups of possibly men, misogynist men who dislike, the LGBTQ community. They dislike Blacks, specifically Black Americans, because Black Americans are the only racialized group in that has well, not Black Americans. Also, we have South Africans, but Black Americans are really the only racialized group that is trying to gain justice from their oppression when it comes to this, this disconnect when it has to do with racism. So there is a dislike for Black Americans in the intelligence groups that are working for the United States and the Republic of Ireland. There is a dislike in these intelligence groups against the LGBTQ community, and there is dislike for Jewish people in these intelligence groups. And that raises a question like, who is actually staffed in these agencies? Who is an interesting question. So this video has gone on long enough. I'm Kiana Canada. You can follow me at Kiana_Canada, Kiana_Canada on Twitter. Here on Facebook, or excuse me, on YouTube, it's at Real Kiana Canada, at Real Kiana Canada. And you can also follow me on Facebook. The link is in the description. See you next time. Bye-bye.